Not only had Hutch been a senior lieutenant in the Irish Mafia, but he was also the nephew of the legendary Jerry the Monk Hutch. The announcement that we were boarding was shrill. Kinahan grinned and picked up his bag, probably worth more than I would earn on my mission to find out what happened to Hutch. His giant Rolex watch could probably pay my salary for a whole year. That's drug money for you. I waited as the Gold Circle passengers were called to board. Kinahan and his pals elbowed their way to the front. He was nothing like his father. He didn't look like an international businessman. He looked like a drug dealer in double grey. As we flew 30,000 feet over France and on towards Spain, I chewed on the ham and cheese sandwich and pondered. I know that organised crime is a violent and a ruthless world. I write about it all the time. But surely Kinahan couldn't have been feeling too good. The callous and cold assassination of Hutch, his one-time wingman, must have been weighing on him. I couldn't restrain my curiosity much longer, and I certainly wasn't in any mood to doze. I unlocked my seatbelt and shuffled past the photographer, who raised an eyebrow to me in warning as I indicated I was just needing the bathroom. At the entrance to first class, opposite the doors of the toilets, I started to stretch my legs and look around to make sure nobody was watching. The passengers' heads nodded from side to side. Some slept on travel pillows, others were lost in books. I pulled back the curtain just enough to see in and scanned the backs of the huge armchairs. I spotted the unmistakable balding head of the son and heir of the Kinahans' estimated £1 billion drug fortune. He was lying back, shoes off, feet up and busy on his mobile phone. The baseball cap was in his hand, ready at all times to be placed back on his head, a comfort blanket of sorts. He and Gary Hutch had been inseparable once. They'd shared everything from prostitutes to a rented villa in their adopted home in southern Spain, where every ambitious gangster goes to graduate. They were part of a club, a brat pack, and later a mob which rivalled the mafias on the Costa del Crime. I'd met plenty of criminals in my time and found that many of them were decent underneath a hard exterior. Some just wanted to provide for their families, the only way they knew how. But the Kinahan crew were different. Ruthless, cruel, immoral. And Hutch had been one of them. So trusted in the belly of the Kinahan organisation that when the Irish Mafia decided to finish with Dublin hitman Paddy Doyle, years previously, it was he who had lured his childhood pal into the trap. Hutch had escaped unharmed when their jeep came under attack, because that was the plan. Doyle had died, and Hutch had returned to Dublin to carry his coffin and claim to his parents that the Russians were to blame. To nail down the pretence, Daniel Kinahan had offered the money to pay for the funeral. Hutch was no saint. He'd lived by the sword, and he died by the sword. That he had likely suffered the same fate, the same type of double cross at the hands of his own, was pretty clear. But his death wouldn't be forgotten like Doyle's. He would be avenged. There was no doubt. The ins and outs of what had happened lay somewhere out there in Spain. In front of me, Kinahan looked like the cat who had got the cream. Comfortable in his mile-high alibi, it seemed to me that death, just like his seat, was simply business. The plane landed, and quickly the business-class passengers were allowed to disembark as the rest of us remained in our seats so as not to get in their way. There is something quite grounding about that class structure that exists on planes. You get what you pay for. You pay for what you can afford, and your fellow passengers can read and judge you accordingly. They left quickly, one after the other. First off was Double Grey. The brown leather bag swung at his side. The hat was back on his head. I wanted to see how he left the airport, although I knew he would probably be long gone by the time those of us in economy were allowed to disembark. The bag with the cameras was awkward, but we were glad we hadn't put it in the hold. We walked as fast as we could without running to passport control and onwards to the arrivals area, where I just caught a flash of the bag, the grey tracksuit bottoms, across the hall at a stairwell. The beefcake and the girl were gone, but there was another guy with him now. He looked Spanish, maybe, dark. They both had their phones in their hands and were looking back towards me. I turned my head back to arrivals and dramatically looked at my watch, then up to the screens above, which announced the times of flights landing into Malaga from all over the world. The photographer kept an eye. He watched them watching me. The Spaniard took Kinahan's bag and gave him a shoulder hug. They laughed, and then they jogged up.
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.